Hi, good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Brigadier General Tim Green, the Director of Civil Engineers, and I want to thank the resources community for having me back to visit with you again after we did this the last time. And the last time we spoke was I think back in August, if I remember the date right, but we really talked about, or actually as we were leaning toward home, maybe it was July, we talked about working hard to close out FY14, and so if you can cue up the first slide that we have, I really just wanted to show you and let you see how we did with FY14 and how you did with FY14, and you did a great job. We fully obligated 4 out of our 6 major accounts in the program, as you can see from the slide, and from where we were to where we got to over the last 2 months was just amazing. And so I want to say thanks for all your hard work. The team, both the Base Resources Advisor and the CE Squadrons at the MAGCOMs, the Comptroller community, the contracting community, the engineering community. It was a huge team effort, and we really overachieved in so many ways. And so thanks for doing that. As you look, we did have a couple accounts again that we were a little short in, but they were smaller dollars, and we took care of the biggest rocks that we had. The next slide, what I want to show you is what we've got teed up for FY15 and have a snapshot of that. And this is just really to kind of show you the accounts and the major programs, very similar to last year, and it shouldn't be a surprise. And so that's kind of the goal or our target this year for you all as a team as we look forward to what's ahead. So again, no surprises. The numbers will go up and down throughout the year in some cases, but we're doing a better job, we believe, and we're trying to get even better about being able to plan and forecast and allow both contracting and resources and the engineers communities to plan and execute what we plan for. So we should be in better shape this year for that. So that's kind of a look back at where we were the last time we talked. What I wanted to do today and what I was asked to do is kind of come in and visit with you about what we see ahead and what was of interest. And so when I asked what the community is interested in, I've got some great partners here on the air staff that made a series of questions. And so all I'm going to do is read the questions that they've given to me today and then answer them as best I can and kind of have the conversation that way. So thanks for those of you who have shared thoughts and questions with the team up there, and then we'll just go through those and line them up, okay? So the first one, the first question was, are there more shakeups in store for civil engineers in FY15? And so shakeups depends on what you mean by that, but I'll say that at the installation level, there really should be little or no change in what's coming ahead in FY15. The changes are really focused at the major command, the intermediate level command, and the HAF, the Headquarters Air Force. As we talked about in August, that has not changed. We're still working to take the cuts and organizational changes at that level, because at the installation level, that's where we make the mission happen. That's where you make the mission happen, and that's what the Air Force recognizes. And so we're trying to provide stability at the installation level. As I said, at the major commands, at what we call now the PSUs or the old FOAs at AFCEC and at the Headquarters Air Force, that's where the changes are going to occur. And primarily as we look to stand up the Air Force Installation and Mission Support Center, that's going to change everybody's roles over the next couple of years as we go from the planning, the provisional headquarters today that's getting ready and looking at a PAD, a Program Action Directive, a P plan. We're going to do a basing decision, and then they're going to stand up the organization. And so as that organization stands up, there will be significant change at both the HAF and the current major commands, as well as the PSUs, whether it's AFCEC, Air Force Security Forces Center is just a couple of the PSUs that will become involved with the IMSC. And currently today already report administratively to the IMSC Provisional Headquarters. The second question, what are your top priorities for FY15? Specifically, what would I like to get done this year? Well, I can tell you we want to get a lot of things done this year, so I'm going to probably narrow that down a little bit and say, really, what are we talking about? What do we want to achieve in regards to resource management and contract execution for this community? And I think that's really primarily, in my view, continuing to improve, as I said before, our integrated priority list, our ability to forecast what we need from 1 year to 2 years out on a consistent basis, and to get that right so that we can plan with our limited resources. We've got fewer resources. We need to be able to plan more effectively and reduce the amount of last-minute changes. As I grew up in the Air Force, last-minute changes were very, very common, and what we want to do in the future is make that the exception. Make those last-minute changes or additions a result of unforeseen circumstances, whether it's storm damage, maybe you have a hurricane or a typhoon come through or a tornado. Those kinds of things will always be with us. What we want to reduce is the amount of other churn as we go through that, and so that's a big item on my list of things to want to do. The other part of that is just the requirements identification and the detail that we go through. As we extend out our time for planning, as we can forecast that, we need to do a better job of being able to accurately identify the requirements, make sure they're valid, make sure we understand what the project requirements are, and so we've got fewer change orders within a project. As we execute programs and as we execute projects, you will often hear things called differing site conditions or unforeseen site conditions, things that I think we can often foresee if we have time to do the planning right and the engineering and the design right. So we need to get better in those areas as well, and that's something that I'd like to have us pursue. And then the third item on this is really the firework, the auditability issue. We're all involved in, if you're in the financial business, we have an audit trail that we have to be able to follow. Very routine for us in contracts management. Resource advisors, again, that's a pretty routine part of what we want to do, and I'm pretty confident that we have good auditable records in these areas. What we need to really work on is in the real property side of this, and you all can perhaps help from where you're at. But on the real property side, ensuring our real property records are accurate and up to date, that we capitalize the projects, and so when a project is completed, we either get if you've demolished something that comes off the books from the real property records, or we capitalize, we show the investment on the other facilities. That's a critical part of what we do, and I think this team is involved in that. And frankly, I will tell you from my perspective, we are behind with that. The last time we were audited, we went out and did some sampling. We continue to really struggle in this area, and so we've got to get better, and we've got to focus some resources against that. Next question was, what is your number one challenge in civil engineering with the stand-up of the Air Force Installation and Mission Support Center? That's a great question. There's a lot of challenges. I would say the number one challenge would have to be resourcing and execution in the crossover years, or what I call the crossover years. FY15, not quite as much, but really FY16 and 17. So in FY15 today, the major commands are executing their programs. They're working with AFCEC. The challenge in executing the FY15 program, I think, is going to be as MAJCOM staffs, we've already seen in many places they're beginning to draw down as individuals who are working at the major commands are looking around for other job opportunities as they see that their staff will be getting smaller. So in some cases, we have major commands being responsible for work that's being done today, and the people who used to do that work have PCS, they've taken another job, and now they're trying to find someone to come in and fill in that gap. So there is a challenge this year, but it's going to be an inconsistent challenge depending on the major command headquarters. I don't see that as a challenge at the installation level. In 16 and 17, we'll really be ramping up, again, the IMSC and establishing the new processes, new programming, and so I see that as being a real challenge. And why I list that as number one, we've got challenges with the IMSC. Anytime you stand up a new organization and new processes and programs, that's difficult across the board, regardless of who's responsible for it. What we have to make sure, and I list resources and execution as number one, is we need to be able to take care of the installations, give you the resources that you need to do your jobs, and make sure that gets processed. I think we can go through and balance this in the years ahead and work out longer term on the processes, but we have to be able to execute during the year that the resources are available to us. What are the biggest challenges facing the CE community in the next year? So a little bit different phrasing on that question, and so I'm going to answer it differently. I think the number one challenge facing our community today is probably professionalism and discipline. in different areas. And I say this because as we look at the difficult time and the stress and the reorganization that's going on, the reductions in personnel, whether it's from force shaping on the military side, the stand-up of the IMSC, and the civilian personnel reductions associated with that, there is a lot of stress, there's a lot of turmoil around the career field. And I have seen that begin to affect some of our individual team players. And so one of the things that concerns me is that one of the things I've always taken great pride in, let me rephrase this. One of the things I've taken great pride in is the professionalism of everybody I've worked with throughout my career, and how they've handled themselves and cared for themselves and others around them. As we've had this stress, I see some folks beginning to make decisions that they wouldn't otherwise make. I see people deciding that, hey, because the Air Force is doing this, this is unfair, life is unfair to me, I'm going to be unfair back. I think we are, as a civil engineer community, as an Air Force community, and what I've dealt with in my career, I think we're better than that. And I think we need to help one another recognize that we shouldn't let anyone else define who we are or what we do or our value, regardless of what happens to our position. And so I am very concerned that we have people who are beginning to determine or assess their value based upon organizational changes instead of what they've actually brought to the Air Force. And as a result, then they lower their professional standards that they have set for themselves. So that's a concern for me in the long run as we go through that. And so how you respond, how we all respond is a choice. And I think we need to look and make the best choices that we can in that light. And again, make sure we're defining ourselves and you're defining yourself versus allowing someone else to define that for you. The second challenge I would say would be probably meeting the mission requirements. As we talk about the changes, our resources are becoming more constrained. We have to make sure that we stay focused on the mission. And so we've done this with asset management. We've done this with the idea that we have to do a better job of defining exactly what we must do next with that next dollar, because we can't afford to do everything we used to do. It's beating the same drum. It's nothing you haven't heard from me and countless others before. But getting the mission requirements right and identifying them fairly and honestly so that there's a level playing field when we're trying to make central decisions, that's a critical issue for us. And then I think just collectively we need to be invested in our future together. And so that's the last part of that challenge, I would say. All right, so the next question is what is the Air Force Civil Engineers Center's mission and their role going forward? AFCEC has really been a source of stability. So when I think about the mission of the Air Force Civil Engineers Center, it's not going to change. And in fact, it's probably going to grow in importance and value to us. We've continued to centralize that. So the mission to provide tools, the mission to provide solutions to engineer communities and installations across the globe will not change in the future as we move forward, as we do that. And so I think what may change as AFCEC, since we talked last, AFCEC has reached FOC. Now Mr. Shabika is in there and he's talking about and looking at what does AFCEC need to do next, what does it need to be next, and he's calling it AFCEC 2.0. So there will be process changes, but I think the outputs will likely not change. The solutions and the tools we are still going to need, and so we're going to wicker with those around the edges. The IMSC is going to stand up and it will have some influence on it, but the core mission of the AFCEC will remain the same. The next question. Now that the Air Force IMSC is in its early stages of operations, can you describe the new roles between A4C, AFCEC, and Air Force IMSC, and do I see any unexpected challenges? Okay, so I'll go over the roles first. For A4C, again, as we've talked about before, the focus is going to shift from strategy development, policy and guidance and oversight. We're going to get away from the execution business that we used to do quite a bit of. The IMSC provisional headquarters today is focusing on organizational stand-up. And so as they said before, they're talking about working and developing the PAD, the P-plan, getting the basin decision behind them, and so establishing new processes, understanding how we will do the business of doing business. That's what they're focused on in the near term. In the future, they will become that intermediate level headquarters, the resourcing portion of that, and so that role will change. AFCEC, as I said, the output will be the same, so very consistent. Their processes internally and their external touch points, who they work with, will change over time as we stand up the IMSC, but those fundamentals will be there. As far as unexpected challenges, I'll tell you, of course I expect them. This is a really Herculean effort that we're talking about. I think it's the most significant change that the Air Force has undergone organizationally, probably in my career. We've stood down SAC and TAC and stood up ACC, and we did some things, but by and large, we didn't change fundamentally how we think about leading at a major command within that construct. We just reorganized the mission sets within that command. This is fundamentally changing how we lead and provide support services across the Air Force, and it touches every Air Force installation. It touches every Air Force major command, and it certainly touches the headquarters Air Force. Nothing else has been like this, and so there will be unexpected challenges. There will be things that we are not going to, I would say get right, that may be the wrong time. This is going to be an iterative process, and we're going to get a lot of things done early, and there's going to be things that we're going to have to do later. And so some things will be intentionally delayed, and there will be unexpected impacts from that. There's no doubt in my mind. We will be better prepared, I think, to anticipate some of these as we move forward, and again, as decisions get made as we go down the road. Do you or do I foresee a rate of change within engineering stabilizing in the near future? So the rate of change stabilizing. I would say no. I don't see the rate of change stabilizing because I haven't seen that throughout my career. From the time I came in the Air Force, change has been the one constant. From how we employ in combat and the things we do, there are some constants within there, and I'll use AM2 matting as an example. We used AM2 mat to prepare runways and taxiways in Vietnam, and we still use that today. But how we organize our forces, how we deploy them forward and do different operations, that has changed. And so there's been a change throughout my career organizationally, within our squadrons, within our major commands. That's been constant. And I don't see that changing. If we think about the idea that, someone who was born before the Wright brothers flew was able to live long enough to see a man land on the moon. That's the kind of change that our society goes through, and we're just a reflection of that in the military. The tools and equipment that we have available to us today make things possible today that I couldn't have imagined when I came into the service. Simply like the integrated priority list. We could not have done an IPL that the AFCEC does today. We could not have done that 20 years ago. When I came in the Air Force, it would have been impossible. So we have tools available now that change how we do things and make things possible. That rate of change with tools development is going to continue. That's just part of the world we live in. And so I think the rate of change is going to be continuous. We will have ebbs and flows. We will have times of stability, if you will, where we try to let the organization sit and refine. But even as the organizations may sit still, we're going to be working to provide you new tools and new possibilities as we imagine the future, as we look to the future, as we look to industry. Okay, the next question. What challenges do military and civilian members face regarding career progression within engineering in the New World Order? I like that, the New World Order. Okay, I'm just looking at that. Does it say 5 minutes remaining? Okay, all right. So 5 minutes, so we're almost done. So the challenges with career progression, as we go through, there's going to be fewer opportunities within the major command locations as we move forward, and I think everybody knows and understands that. So the challenges are going to be for us as a community to identify what positions are key for military and civilian in development, how do we move people around those and do that in the future. And until we get a more defined IMSC and we understand what the positions they're going to have within their organization, we are not able to move forward as quickly as we would like because, again, the IMSC development is going through it in a very deliberate manner. So since I only have a couple of minutes left, I'm going to skip all these other great questions, probably the hardest ones, I would suspect. No, I think they asked the hard ones at the end, or at the beginning. So the questions on resources, there's one in here that said, you know, do I anticipate increased centralization of funds across the Air Force? The answer to that is yes. We've centralized medical dollars, we've centralized flying hour dollars, we've centralized now R&M dollars. I think where it makes sense, the Air Force will continue to increase the centralized management. I don't know when, I don't know what the next step is, I don't know what the right tools are, but I would anticipate across the Air Force that will occur over time as we go through this. Okay, so I'm going to skip, let's see, FSRM risk. I'm not going to skip that. What do I define as risk, and what is the FSRM risk? I'll tell you, I see FSRM risk, and we define that about $4.2 billion in risk in FY15. And what that means is I'm concerned that there's not going to be fallout money coming back into the program. As other programs like flying hours, like OCO, get smaller and they execute their dollars, there's a possibility that money won't flow at the end of the year toward us because we get those funds based upon poor execution of others. And so we flow money out from the civil engineering community at the beginning of the year and we get paid back. That risk is that we won't get the money back as we go through to the end. And so that's where my concern is on FSRM. And what you need to do at the installations is just be ready to execute, just like you did last year. Get your program, get your projects set up, go through all the processes, use the IPL, and be ready to execute when the money comes and get that awarded promptly. Okay, so I think that's probably about all I have time for. I'd like to close by thanking the team, Roger Bick, Zalma, Alamar, Rebecca Kellner, Liz Myhouse, Lauren Marcinkowski, and Ren Maloney, and Maisel Eisler for putting this together. The need to do things like this where we communicate with the field is going to go up. When we stand up IMSC, there's going to be a need to be able to reach out and touch, to provide information, to provide training, to do all of these things. It's difficult in this one-way environment. I wish I could reach out and see you and touch you and get the questions directly instead of reading them. But today, this is better than the alternative, which is nothing. This is going to be an essential part of what we do in the future, even as we travel. You know, there is a last question that asks, you know, what is my favorite thing about being director? And it's about getting to see and see the airmen and talk to them, military, civilian, active, National Guard, Reserve, our civilian contracting partners, our contractor partners that are with us. It's inspiring. And so I understand that part of the need to get together is so that you can also see and meet these amazing people and be inspired by them. We're going to continue to try to balance what we do remotely, what we do in this manner, and what we do in person. And I think, you know, in my view, we can never fully replace the in-person contact as we go through our different seasons, but this is going to be an essential element because we simply can't afford to do it in the manner that we used to. So I appreciate your time. Thanks for letting me join you this morning, and I will get off the stage and let you go to the next one. Sorry for not getting to all the questions. Thanks.